Ecuador. I have to tell you about this, guys. This has been a mystery where people were saying, well, we see earthquakes every 6 years, like clockwork, and we do not know why. Why is this in such regular time distances? This is not normal. So people were thinking, what is going on there? Is there something going on other than nature? But there is a fault line deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, and that fault line has been generating magnitude 6 earthquakes every 6 years like clockwork, an absolute mystery, but now we know why. And of course, I tell you about this because I'm on the pulse of this for you. So do me a favor before I tell you this crazy story, give this video an early like and a hype. It helps my channel and it doesn't cost you anything. Deep in the Pacific Ocean, far away from the coast of Ecuador, there is, we have to say, a fascinating geological spot. It is known as the Gofar Fault. Have you ever heard about this? Sounds goofy, the Gofar Fault. And for the last 30 years, guys, it has been the center of a big mystery. Let me know if you have ever heard about that. Write it in the comments. Did you know about this? So every 5 to 6 years, it experiences a magnitude 6 quake. And that is absolutely strange that this is going like clockwork. If you follow my channel, we follow earthquakes all around the Pacific Ring of Fire and the whole Earth, but that is on such a regular basis is absolutely weird. So an earthquake that is repeatedly hitting the same place with the same energy was unheard of. Absolutely. So it seems people were wondering, scientists were scratching their heads. They said something peculiar must be going on that is causing this. And now, finally, the scientists have an answer. So the Gofar Fault is situated between the Pacific Tectonic Plate and the Nazca Tectonic Plate. So this is a type of transform fault where two plates move horizontally past each other. So they're not subducting there. And they are shifting at a rate of 14 centimeters, that is that much, 5.5 inches per year. That's basically, if you say, roughly the growth of your fingernails if you were to grow them out for a year. Please don't, it's gross, right? But because there aren't fingernails there, but massive slabs of rock, the movement, of course, accumulates a lot of energy, and that is then released as earthquakes. So for that Gofar Fault, the release appears to be impossibly regular when it comes to the time, but also the magnitude, right? So researchers set out to understand how. So a team of scientists conducted ocean floor experiments in 2008 and then again between 2019 and 2022 to measure the detailed geological behavior before, during, and after the quakes. Is there a pattern? What is happening before the quake is very important, right? And this is interesting. The data reveal the presence of a, listen to this, geological barrier regions that can absorb the fault stress without producing enormous earthquakes. Aha, okay, still doesn't explain why it does produce the earthquakes as it does, right? So I quote one of the scientists. We've known these barriers existed for a long time, but the question has always been, what are they made of? And why do they keep stopping earthquakes so reliably, cycle after cycle? So the data has taken 2 cycles. So that's 12 years, right? If it happens every 5 to 6 years. So 2 cycles apart, and that reveals the secret of these geological barriers. So the instruments show that in the months and weeks ahead of major quakes, the barrier basically lit up with intense earthquake swarms, but small quakes. Tens of thousands of quakes were detected. And I bet you if they feed this into an AI algorithm by now, it'll be even more. So then big quake struck. And then after the big quake, the seismological activity around the barrier became almost completely quiet, silence. So what the scientists believe now, that the barriers are complex zones where the fault basically splits into multiple sideways strands, fault lines, right? Like a spider web, with offsets between them, between 100 and 400 meters. So 109 to 437 yards is what they're telling us. And then seawater seeps deep inside the rock. And when a large quake hits, this causes the rock to lock up. So that creates basically an effective break to the quake. So what they're telling us is these barriers are not just passive features of the landscape down there. They're active, dynamic parts of the fault system. And they say, now that they understand how they work, that changes how we think about earthquake limits on these faults. So the good thing is the Gofar fault is far from any population. So these regular quakes do not affect people, but there are similar faults around the world that might. So to understand them is paramount to learn how quakes form and behave so we can protect populations from their impacts. So how can I explain this in the most simple way? So this barrier, basically, these slabs are moving past each other and it prevents movement in a certain area. So we don't have a long rupture in the whole fault, because usually a longer rupture of a fault line means a bigger earthquake, right? Earthquake gets normally bigger when more fault length breaks, more fault area slips. Basically, the rocks are moving farther. So a smaller quake might only break a short patch of a fault. Bigger quake breaks a longer section. So that's why this barrier that they have discovered matters. It stops the rupture from running farther along the fault. So instead of the break spreading into a much longer section of the Gofar fault and becoming maybe a magnitude 7, it stops earlier, always at the same barrier, always at the same one, around magnitude 6, right? So this fault has two important parts: the stuck patch. This part is locked for years. The plates keep pushing. Stress builds, and after about 6 years, the stress is big enough, it breaks. That's the snap. That's the magnitude 6 earthquakes. After the quake starts, the rupture tries to spread farther along the fault, but the barrier puts on the brake. It stops the rupture from traveling too far. So we're dealing with steady plate movement, 14 centimeters. Stuck patch is reloading, snaps every 6 years, because that's exactly the energy to make that break. The barrier stops it again, quake only around magnitude 6. So the barrier does not make the quake happen, but it keeps the quake from getting bigger. I hope you found that interesting. And yeah, they found also something below Japan, which explains the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, and that it was not random, that it was about to happen at exactly that location. And what they found about the subduction zone, something like that could be at any subduction zone, could be on the West Coast, Cascadia Fault. So highly, highly interesting if you're into that, because that could also be something that we're dealing with here, just in the bad way, why it gets so big. Because subduction zones are not all the same, but they have some features that they all might have. And if we know that the 2011 quake was not random, and that tells us it can happen again. So we need to find spots like this at other subduction zones. Highly, highly interesting. Check out the video on the end screen, guys. Bye-bye.